Hello, and welcome to another episode of Making Sense of Politics with me, Kate Carruthers.
And me, Nancy Georges.
Hello, Nancy. It's lovely to see you again.
It's twice in 1 week. We're doing so well.
I know. And we saw each other in real life at the Opera House, which was fabulous.
We have, and I've been holding off sharing the picture till I can say we're dropping our episode and we met in real life this week. So that was really interesting talk on fascism at Curious at the Opera House. I look forward to more talks there next year. But it was very thought provoking. And I came home and Jace was watching a documentary about World War II, and I was like, "Uh-oh, holy moly, look at that." It's crazy watching it in real life, isn't it?
Oh my God,
It's
yeah,
fun.
it's really strange.
It's a
Well,
bit
we've
nuts.
got a big episode today, though.
This is your clever idea that we do a deep dive, and the Australian media ownership is so important because people don't realise that there's less than a handful of people that control over 80% of our media. So I'm going to leave you to start, but this is one that's going to be very informative for a lot of people, and will probably light some bulbs by the end of it, don't you think?
Yeah, I think so. And I think it's going to be astonishing to people to understand how little uh, diversity there really is in the media, apart from that independent media that we share as part of this podcast.
Absolutely, and I think the link to why we need to know is all around media literacy and critical thinking. Like I'm really looking forward to really doing a deep dive at critical thinking. But once we understand how few people own it, then we understand the messaging. The media literacy isn't just about trying to decipher they're saying this, but they mean this, but understanding who's telling you that message and what their
Yeah,
bias is, isn't it?
yeah. And in one of our future episodes, we're going to cover off some good resources about media literacy, but I think we don't have time today because there's so much to cover for this. So
Absolutely.
basically, in Australia, there are three organisations that own our news media. There's News Corp, which is Rupert Murdoch, ancient Rupert Murdoch, who
Who
won't
doesn't live in
die,
Australia?
who's now an American because he renounced his Australian citizenship many years ago. Um, and then there's Nine Entertainment Co., which used to be Fairfax Media, which owns the other chunk of it. And then there's Seven West Media. So that's the media in Australia in a nutshell.
It's
There we go. We're
insane.
done.
Yeah, yeah, finish, go home now. Thanks for
No, but
coming. Thanks for joining us.
so, but some of the this has been something we've been talking about for ages, and here is a media release where somebody who was a shadow minister back in 2016 was talking about the concentration of media ownership. So it's been a problem in Australia for a very long time, and we can say at least since 2016.
Yeah,
And it is just those three companies for the most part.
it's insane.
Let's move to the next one. So
Sure.
so I want to do a deep dive into the News Corp global empire. Um, and I one thing I love about the News Corp logo, that's Rupert Murdoch's signature.
No. Oh,
That's
I thought when I first looked at the site, I thought, oh, Kate's generated News Corp, like in a different font. I should go get the logo. And then I went, lo and behold, it is the logo.
it is the logo. No, and it was taken from
Oh,
his
no.
and his father's signature. So they apparently they were very similar, their handwriting.
Says it
And
all there
you
and
know,
then, doesn't it?
the one good thing, I don't like News Corp. I'll just go on the record right now saying I do not like them, do not approve of them. They're basically a right wing news media organisation. Um, so I just want to be upfront about my feelings. Um,
Mine
but
too.
one thing
Just,
that cheers me up is their global revenue is going down. So back in
yeah.
2010, their revenue was US 32 billion, and their revenue in 2024 was US 10 billion. So it's going in a good direction
Wow.
but it's still a lot.
Well, it's interesting because a seven was the same. It is an enormous, but that's huge, really, isn't it? That's a big drop considering the reach of media today with digital assets and the fact that we listen to our news. It is a lot, and considering that they've got such a, or they had such a stronghold. But I think this is the. I mean, what do you think? What do you think part of this reason is? Because
I think it's
I
the growth of new media, and they haven't. Rupert's never been able to be successful really with new media.
yeah,
So more and more people don't read newspapers, don't watch TV news anymore. So
yeah,
they're getting their news from other platforms like TikTok, like Instagram. So it's starting to decline. So they've got a rusted on community of boomers,
mm,
in particular in Australia and in the US, and in the UK. So but I'm glad their empire's declining, but it's still a really significant empire. So let's move on to the next slide. Um, they have their fingers in an awful lot of pies.
yeah.
And this is all taken from the News Corp global website, so the US one, and they've got a whole lot of products. So
Okay.
they own things like Dow Jones, so
Yeah,
they own things like the Wall Street Journal.
yeah,
So they've got media assets that you wouldn't think of as News Corp. So when you think about, the Wall Street Journal, you think, oh, that's a reputable newspaper that's a financial news media platform, but it's really a Murdoch media platform.
yeah.
So it is essentially skewed right wing.
As is Fox. Let's not forget Fox US,
Oh yeah,
Fox Media. That's there. So if that tells you everything you need to know about the rest, doesn't it?
yeah.
Yeah,
Well, he actually. So let's run through their assets. So
yeah,
next slide, thanks. So there's the Wall Street Journal. There's Dow Jones.
yeah,
Then next slide. They've got all sorts of gossip magazines. So they've
yeah,
got the New York Post. They've got Decider. They've got Page Six. Got Alexa. So they've got all of these gossip magazines. They actually own publishing assets. So if you're reading a book that's published by HarperCollins, they own that. So they and HarperCollins, for instance, they publish most romance novels.
yeah.
They publish a significant number of romance novels. So you wouldn't think of the Murdoch media empire as doing that, but that is, and it's very big business.
Yeah.
Next
Well, it's
slide.
also a really great way to push propaganda without it being overtly propaganda,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah. And they own real estate assets globally. In the US, Realtor is a big one.
Yeah.
In Australia, they own realestate.com.
I was going
And
to
then
say,
in the UK, they also own. Next slide, thanks.
sorry, Kate. I was going to actually say they've actually bought three other real estate platforms in Australia recently as well. So
Mm,
probably everything
yeah.
we took our real estate on is them now.
So there's a tremendous amount of consolidation now. Anyway, so just covering off what they bought in the UK. So they own the Times, the Sunday Times, the Sun, News Broadcasting, TLS. Um, they own, oh no, they've just sold another one, so they don't own it anymore. I can't remember the name of it. But they have, this is just their news media assets.
Yeah.
If you go to the next slide.
It just, the logo is just doing my head in.
I know, I know.
Yes.
So the other thing that they've moved into is Storyful, which is their move into social media.
Yeah.
And this one actually does social news monitoring, and it also does things like video licensing. So if you record a cutesy video that you want to go viral, you can license it through this platform, and they'll pay your royalties, and they'll sell it to news outlets around the world so that you get royalty streams.
Ugh, it's also intertwined, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's domiciled in Ireland for tax purposes.
Of course it
Uh,
is.
yeah, as so many things are.
Yep.
In Australia, the Australian, which has a readership of like two old men and a dog, I think. Um, they bump up their distribution numbers for the Australian by dumping huge piles of them in university dining halls, that students don't read. But all of those other news media platforms, Herald Sun, the Daily Telegraph, news.com, they all still get pretty good traffic in Australia. So, they are still setting a news agenda, even though nobody reads The Australian anymore.
And in airport lounges, there's always so many, aren't there?
Yeah, they give them out for free because it bumps up their distribution numbers. Because if they give them away, they can count them as part of their distribution numbers.
I remember magazines used to do that, but the thing is that it comes down to when there is a reform, and I do believe, hopefully in our lifetime, there is a reform around this. That also needs to be redefined, doesn't it? We probably
Well,
won't really have the same sort of.
part of the challenge is like who will once the boomers pass on, who will be reading these things?
Well,
So,
I,
that's the
the
real
beauty is
challenge.
that for me, I love a good news source, a reputable news source, and I find that they are so negligent because they let it die. It's like having a really great steak and then not finishing it for dinner, but not putting it in the fridge so you can't eat it tomorrow. You let it die. Do you know what I mean?
Hmm.
And it's like it's such a pity because it's such a great place to be able to read, and reading so important, and touching your news is so important. But these rat bags have just, they kept waiting for people to get it, which tells you everything you need to know about them. And people went elsewhere. And it won't even be, we won't have any newspaper for fish and chips. What's going to happen?
I know. Oh, what will we do for our fish and chips? Now, this is a really interesting thing that people might not realize that they do, is they actually run a bunch of advocacy campaigns.
Yeah.
So they do things that are community focused,
Yeah.
and they're a voice for community causes. So some of them are quite sensible, and some of them are genuinely right wing. And this is in addition to them funding things like Advance. So they see themselves trying to be in Australia social activists. So they try to get community support behind ideas that they want to drive change for.
And
Uh,
Advance is Kate?
hmm? Oh,
Advance is
Advance is a separate organisation which is very right wing, that tries to build cases for or against things that most people in Australia don't want. So they're anti climate change, they're anti equality, they're anti feminism, they're
freedom.
anti-abortion, they're anti everything that I think is good and right and proper,
Yep.
basically.
Same.
But they are an organisation that basically do what we call astroturfing. So they will they will fund people to put comments on social media in their own cause,
Yeah.
and fund, so it'll skew the results that people are getting in their media monitoring and stuff. Anyway, so that's something that News Corp does. That advocacy is something that they do really explicitly. This is some of their property websites. So if you are renting in Australia or buying in Australia, buying property or renting property, you have probably given all of your details to News Corp, because they own all of the big platforms. If you just go to the next slide, it shows all of the
Yeah.
platforms. So they've got Flatmates, they've got realestate.com, they've got commercial, they've got mortgage choice. So like News Corp has a tremendous amount of data on individuals in across Australia who might not understand that News Corp actually has all of that data, which I think is a really interesting thing. I just think it's fascinating that we to rent a property, you've given them all of your data. They've got your pay stubs, they've got your bank account details.
I don't like it. I like it in each silo. I don't like it that it's in real estate media comms. Like, I don't like it.
Well,
I don't
yeah, but
I don't like it because they behave badly, actually. If they behaved with integrity and ethics, it would be fine. But they don't know what those words mean, so
well, and if you've ever got a mortgage, Mortgage Choice is a brand that a lot of people have used, and that they've got all your details, and you probably weren't fully aware that when you signed up with a mortgage through Mortgage Choice, that you were giving that money, you're giving your data to News Corp.
yeah.
And I
Yeah.
don't think
No,
a
of
lot of
course
people
not.
understand that
Yeah.
they own all of these properties.
It's, as an aside, I think this whole thing around data, who we're giving it to, who owns it, who doesn't take care of it, is going to be more and more important and valued and defined moving forward. It has to be, surely.
Yeah. But there's even more. So these are some uh, property industry related websites that they own. So these are ones that do analytics and stuff for people who are selling properties and things,
Yeah.
and running campaigns and doing the media for your properties. So that they've got both sides. So they've got like the people who are buying or selling properties, but they've also got the companies that are trying to buy or sell properties to people.
Yeah.
So they've got all of this. So it's just an astonishing amount of data that they are collecting on the Australian population that people have no idea about. Anyway,
With digital ID coming into the fore, which we'll talk about in the future, I'm sure it's very interesting, isn't it? Where all the
yeah.
data's coming.
So some of the
Yes,
stuff
here we
that
go.
you might not realize is News Corp, is Sky News. So Sky News was founded originally in the UK and then came to Australia, and so they own all the Sky News branded uh, media. So they own and they own the YouTube channels associated with them, and then they also own Foxtel. But they also own, and people don't understand this too, they also own Binge, KO, and Fox Sports. So they really do control a whole lot of the news media landscape.
And the apps, the betting apps too, there's some integration, isn't there?
Yeah. So by if you just think about the flatmates, the realestate.com, all of this, they've got data on every single person in Australia one way or another.
For sure. We've touched them somewhere, haven't we? We've
Yeah.
touched one of their sites and one of their assets somewhere. And then further, we've
But
got
wait,
all.
there's more. Wait,
Yeah.
there's more. So obviously there's news.com.au, which is their main website. But in recent times they've bought Business Spectator and the Eureka Report. So they are digital business and financial news platforms, and they still run those as separate brands, but they are all under News Corp. And then from just the home and kids stuff, they run Kids Spot, they run taste.com.au, Home Life Delicious, Australia's Best Recipes, like all of that stuff. They own all of that. So, even if you haven't signed up through flatmates.com or something, you've probably signed up with them just to get a recipe.
Yep. Yep.
And
Well, I mean,
then
kids sports huge, isn't it, too? If you have children, you live on that for the first 10 years.
yeah, yeah. And then realestate.com.au, like if you're looking for property in Australia, like the choices are very limited outside of that. There's basically Domain
Mm,
and real estate. They're the two big ones. And realestate.com.au is the bigger.
yeah.
So most people who want to sell a property will try to sell it on realestate.com.au. So that's where all the agents are.
It's the
And
one that comes up top when you're searching. The agents will give you their real estate link, realestate.com.au link before they give you anything else,
yeah,
even before their website sometimes.
yeah. So
Yeah.
So they really own a whole lot of the landscape in Australia. All right, but there's more. But wait, there's more. So they also own,
just,
and they
just when you thought
also
it was.
own a lot of gambling. So a
Yeah.
lot of the gambling stuff. So they do the horse racing, they do the tipping, the footy tipping. They've got Supercoach, they've got odds, they've got punters.com. So this is all the sports racing and betting info sites. So you've if they haven't got you through all of those food sites, they've got your hubby through all of the sports and betting sites. And then they've got branded content and marketing. So they actually have lots of these smaller agencies, and then Storyful, which I mentioned before. So they can literally control, in one way or another, the whole media landscape in Australia.
And I think looking because I didn't realize around the betting apps as well, but it also gives them incredible power over individuals in those industries. So if you've got somebody who doesn't like the TV station that you're watching, they don't want to appear on your sports show, they're forced to because these guys have their hands in so many pies across sport. You can't afford to ignore them or to protest, really.
Yeah.
Can you? So all of a sudden, like the reason ownership's so important and is that number one, they have your information. The data that they hold is astonishing. But number two is that power then that they have over individuals or businesses within different industries is huge. So if you don't play and pay, you have nothing to do in that industry.
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
so it's an immense amount of power that they have that's
Mm.
kind of unspoken. And if they decide they don't want to deal with you as an individual or a corporation, they can lock you out of all of this.
Yep. Too much power, Kate.
So
Oh,
much.
but wait.
But wait,
So
there's more.
we got the apps, we got the TV station, now we got the team.
Well, if you remember that, there's been some shenanigans with footy
Yes.
teams, rugby league teams over the years.
Yeah.
Um, and both Packer and Murdoch had interest in footy, so they've still got they still sponsor that club. Um, and they're so, and you might wonder how this might play into things like stadiums, so things that might impact
Right.
individuals in cities. If your city wants to build a fancy big stadium, it will probably be for either an AFL or an NRL team, and they will be one of the big organizations lobbying government to build that new fancy stadium, spend $1 billion on a stadium so we can have our footy team play there.
Yeah. And we want the coverage and we want to license it.
And just think about when they have that stadium, there are ads for all of those brands that I've mentioned around the stadium. And now when you're looking at
On the
them, you will
grass.
see how many of them
Yeah.
are News Corp brands.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
And on the
when
grass
you're
when they
watching
do
the
the grass
Broncos
ads.
next time, you'll notice.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yes, let's do a spot. Let's do a where's the Wally. Yeah, yeah. So much. And
All right, but wait, there's more. There's even more. There's more.
and
There's so much more. There's still more. There's a lot. There's a lot more. Okay, so um, I've got friends who are trying to divest themselves from being involved in Murdoch media at all, and they're just horrified when they realize that it is everything. It's like
yeah,
high pages, one big switch. You wouldn't think any of these brands, but they are. So they've got interest in these. So if you want a better deal for your electricity and gas, a lot of people go to one big switch. News Corp. Don't realize it.
yeah.
High pages to find a tradie. That's them too. So it's just an astonishing amount of reach. And I just don't think people realize how broad their reach is.
I don't think so either.
All right,
Oh,
keep going. Let's
now
keep going.
they're in your ears as well.
So they and this plays into the seven media thing that we can talk about later. So they own stakes in a number of radio networks.
Yeah,
So they don't own any directly. They used to, but they divested those. And a lot of their holdings in radio are in the UK or Ireland. And I think the reason they don't hold them anymore is because radio is not as influential as it used to be. So they've divested them over the years. But still, they're a player in the market, and if they want something, it's going to happen.
yeah.
So,
And
ah,
also in the other ear,
I
Talkie
know,
talkie this
I
way,
know.
singing this way.
So they don't
Merry
really have
Melody.
large amounts of music holdings or audio streaming interest. And again, I think this is because it wasn't profitable for them.
Yeah.
So they used to own Mushroom Records,
I
Festival
didn't
Mushroom
realise that
Records.
till I read your slide.
Yeah, when they were a thing, like when records were a thing, but they're not
Yeah.
a thing anymore, so nobody cares about
They're
it.
coming back, Kate. Records are coming back and books are coming
I know.
back.
I've heard
Touch.
all the cute, cool kids, like genuine Gen Z kids, are buying vinyl discs.
Love it.
I
I'm
just
there
think
for
it's
that.
hilarious. Um, so there's nothing in the media that suggests they're re-entering music production or they're very interested in radio, which is, I think, really interesting because uh, I did some media work a couple of years ago with a health related business, and they were advertising on radio, and it didn't do very well for them. And it really wasn't. It basically was just boomers.
Mm.
So if you're not trying to market to boomers, then you're not really interested in radio. But that's the only thing, the only area I can find that they're not really interested or invested in.
So, I mean, if you were an altruistic communications business, you would be in radio. But if you're just an accounting firm making money, you just don't go where the money isn't, do you?
Well, or where the people are.
Or with,
So,
yeah,
they do much better out of realestate.com.au. And I can remember when that was founded
me too.
and everybody was like, oh, this is never going to work.
Me
Who
too.
wants to who wants to look at houses on the web?
Oh
But,
God.
they invested in it. And I remember the guys that started that business, and they were going around talking to people and trying to get people to invest in it. And there was a very large proportion of the population, including people at Fairfax, who were like, oh, it's never going to take off. They'll keep going to the that was in the days when Fairfax had the Sydney Morning Herald, the Saturday paper, where you'd go and you'd circle houses and you'd go and look at them.
Which is
And
what
they
we used to
thought
do,
that was
right? That's
the
what.
new
That's how you
paper.
found property.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I remember it was property, and I said no, as if you'd buy a house, buy plane tickets and shoes. They were my three. That was like, that's ridiculous, and I do all three now.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, but
Yep.
it's so yeah. Never say never.
So this is
In
just a
summary,
summary for people. If you want to just take one slide away, this is they are really big in TV, digital, sport, and lifestyle media.
yeah.
That's where they're playing. And but I thought it would be interesting to just look at Rupert Murdoch, because he's an ancient dude now. He keeps getting married. Um,
Still alive.
I know he's not dead. I've had him dying on my bingo cards for several years in a row. I'll be right eventually. Um,
Well, his
so
mum
he,
wasn't his mum 100. That
yeah, she
beautiful,
died. She was a
beautiful
hundred
woman.
and something when she died.
Yeah,
So,
Dame
and
Elizabeth.
he's got mummy issues, I think.
Uh,
So he was a small town
mm,
publisher when he started. He inherited the Australian, which was a national newspaper based in Adelaide, of all places. So it was really small. And he made it a national newspaper. He made it a real player. So in the 70s and 80s, it became a really big national political newspaper.
yeah.
And back in those days, because I remember those days, I can remember. So I used to read the Australian Financial Review, the Sydney Morning Herald, and the Australian every day.
In the 70s and 80s.
Yeah.
Kate, I used to read Tiger Beat TV Week. See the difference in
But
us?
the Australian was a respectable
So
newspaper. It was
impressed.
it
Yeah.
was conservative,
Yes.
but it wasn't fascist. Um,
Yeah.
and it was quite reasonable. It had reasonable articles and stuff. And just over the years, it has swung so far to the right that I got to the stage in the early 2000s where I was like, I can't read this anymore. It's just so mad.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost the opposite. Like sometimes I'll read a headline and I'll go, right, so the opposite is true.
Yeah,
Let me find the facts.
yeah.
Yeah, it's
But
such a pity.
he sort of parlayed his he was a real power broker in Australia with the politicians, and he would
Mm.
basically tell them, he would predict the election and it would happen. So I want this to be the result, and that would be the result, sort of thing. And
Yeah.
then he moved to the UK, and then he started to build up his power base in the UK. And then he was basically influencing elections there. So he bought the Times, which was the paper of record in the UK. So he was really powerful. And then he went to the US, and that's when he started Fox News. So he basically, I think, started out as a conservative, a reasonable middle of the road conservative
Mm.
back in the day, and then over the 70s and 80s started to swing further and further to the right. And he
Yeah.
went to America, where he met up with some people. So if you just go to the next slide.
Sorry, Kate. Yep.
So he is really to blame for the creation of Trump for the
Yeah.
most part. And I'll
Yeah.
explain why. So when he went to the US, he decided to form Fox News, and it was intended to be a right-wing news media platform. And it was a TV news channel, and it was basically like CNN for the right wing.
Yep.
And it actually has captured the boomer conservative audience in the US since it was founded, and it has become their sole source of news. So it is the single most influential news media in the conservative space right up until till about 2016.
Yeah.
And it was really about, and he met this guy Roger Ailes, and that they formed Fox News, and it has been basically the thing that they have created the Trump phenomenon.
By
So,
not telling the truth, we've got to say how. By not always having factual information, sorry, can't say that, can we? Never let the truth get in the way of a good story, they don't. And
oh
that
yeah,
they,
and now they just lie openly. They
yeah,
started out by just skewing the truth,
yeah.
but now they just make stuff up.
In the court case, the betting, oh no, the voting machine, which it will come to me in a second. The one where they had to pay 700.
Next slide.
Oh, sorry, there you go. Oh,
There
there,
you go.
Fox Dominion, of
Here's one
course.
we prepared earlier.
787. Oh, see, look how good. But this was interesting because in that court case, they went, oh, no, we're not a news source. We're an entertainment site.
Yeah.
We're an entertainment business, which would come to a shock for a lot of viewers, wouldn't it?
Well, I don't think they even care anymore.
Yeah.
I don't think Trump voters and the conservatives, the rusted on conservatives who watch Fox News, really care about the truth anymore. So they just care about their narrative, and they don't really want anything that doesn't align with their narrative. So they don't want to have any cognitive dissonance.
Yeah.
The really interesting thing about this is Lachlan Murdoch, who is the son of Rupert, who has become the winner in the family stakes to take over his empire after he goes, was also part of this case, and he doubled down on his position. So they're really quite unhinged, both of them. But re- um, I think Rupert kind of feels bad that he's created the Trump phenomenon now, because it's obviously quite
Do you think?
bonkers.
I
And
just
he
think he
can't
probably
put
doesn't
the
like that
impact
it's
of it
biting
all.
him. He's biting him in the bum. That's what he doesn't like. I don't think
Yeah.
he's sad about it.
Oh no, I don't think he's sad about it, except that it's having an impact on his business, which makes him
Yeah,
sad.
that's
Yeah.
yes, exact. But the thing was about Fox with what they're doing is that it is. I mean, like to your point, 2/3 of people Trump supporters Fox did a survey, and they said if he was found, or if it was proven that he committed SA against women, because I don't know if we can say that, so I don't want to get us blocked off. But if what people are saying he's doing,
Yeah.
would you still follow him? 2/3 said yes.
Yeah.
They don't care if he's a rapist. It's just, to me, that's just. But Fox did that by giving them information and giving them news in an entertainment propaganda way, constantly, and not letting them out of that room. Really, is how it was done, wasn't it?
Well, and I know people in the States who've lost their parents
Yes,
to
family.
Fox News
Yep.
and can't have a sensible conversation with them now because they are so far down the Fox rabbit hole that they can't even have a non-partisan family dinner anymore
Yeah. Yeah, it's
because
very sad.
they're so bonkers now. So it's just it's an amazingly pernicious thing that they've done in the US. They haven't managed to do the same thing in Australia, and they haven't managed to do the same thing in the UK.
It,
But they have
should you say
literally
yes,
done it.
or do you think they won't ever?
Well, I think that Rupert thought that the US was the main game
Yeah.
because the US is the global hegemon, so they are the world leader. So he thought if I win them, I win everything, and everyone else will just fall in behind. So
And
he's right.
Americans, they do tend to value money and celebrity, really, which is what all this is wrapped up in. Whereas in Australia and the UK, we have a little bit more of a filter, I suppose, thank God. God.
One would hope. All right,
Oh,
so moving on to Lachlan, who is
talking
the
about the
big winner.
spawn, the winner. Oh, how sad, Kate. All that money and no heart, no brains.
So I met him a couple of times back in the day when I used to do rock climbing. So I used to do rock climbing, and I would climb sometimes in the gym with Tim McCartney Snape and Lachlan Murdoch. It was a long time ago.
Was he
Um,
was he ever nice?
no, he was nice. That's the thing. This is the thing with all of these people. When you meet them, they're nice.
Mm,
They're not evil. They're not rubbing their hands trying to be evil. They're perfectly nice. He was perfectly nice, but it was a long time ago. So I
yeah.
suspect it was before he'd really thrown his hat in the ring with his dad and become further right than his dad. So um, he was living in Australia. It was last century. It was late last century.
Before he got
And
married, before he had the kids.
yeah, so he hadn't kind of bought into wanting to control the family empire back in those days. He was just a young man about town. So anyway, he was perfectly nice, perfectly civil, uh, a reasonably good climber.
I was going to ask that. That was. And could climb a wall.
Yeah. And the thing is that he literally spent years outside the family empire, and he said he wanted
Yeah.
to escape, but he got drawn back in. And uh, in recent shenanigans with the family, his dad Rupert really wants him to be put in charge because
Mm.
he's the right wingest of all of the kids. Um, so it's
Can't go past crazy. Crazy.
yeah,
So they went to court. The 4 adult children went to court for control over the empire when their dad cucks it.
yeah,
Very
yeah.
preemptive, wasn't it? And it came out that Lachlan got it, and the others have been paid lots of money, and they've given it up.
I think everybody's happy now.
Yeah.
But the really interesting thing is, people think when Rupert dies that the News Corp empire will die. Like it's not going to. It's going to be taken over by Lachlan, who's further right wing than Rupert.
But I think, you know how they always say the third one breaks it? First one makes it, second one grows it, third one breaks it. It's going to be
Well,
interesting.
their revenue's already going down.
Yeah. So that's because I think it's the same a lot of it is wrapped around the personality of Rupert. And I think he probably, like the things he has over people and info he has, you can't fully transfer that over to somebody, I don't think. But I also think Lachlan will be living in a more regulated world where these huge companies are going to be broken down. So I think that will be different too.
Well, probably not in the US. So in the US, with the Trump regime and what will probably come after, he's pretty well set up to do really well because they're going to favor, big players that are friendly to them, which Fox has been.
See,
So,
I think all of that after Trump goes, I think in the next 3 to 5 years, that will all be so different. It'll be such a different country. But you're
I
right. At the
I don't
moment,
think it's going to be that soon, Nancy.
no, I don't think the legislation and regulation will change that. I'm with you. I think it's at least 5, 10 years before they can actually change laws and things. But I think the sentiment and the fact that they won't be able to buy politicians that will change within 5 years, I would say. You
I
won't
don't,
be able
I
to have all that money in there
I don't
because
see it. I don't see it changing in the US. I see the US, you know, it's moved into an authoritarian oligarchic regime,
mm,
and I see Lachlan as being ideologically aligned, and he'll do very well. He'll do better than Mark Zuckerberg because Mark Zuckerberg
oh, he's an
is
idiot.
just so obviously a suck up,
Yeah. Well, he's
and I
not
don't think Trump
smart.
likes
He's
suck
just
ups.
rich. Yeah. Well, but see, Lachlan's also part of the institution. That's where a lot of that, like when you say Packer and Murdoch, there has a weight with that. Zuckerberg was just somebody who took a platform and was in the right place at the right time.
Yeah,
He's rich, he's not smart.
but also, he used to be donating to the Democrats, and now he's sucking up to Trump. It's kind of obvious that he's what he's done.
He's set
If
up.
you move to the next slide, there,
How much
it's
money
really
can they have, Kate? How much more do they need? How many
well.
million billion do you need?
Lachlan's got about 3.5 billion or 4 billion or something. He in his own right. So
Yeah,
the really interesting thing is he is far more right wing than his dad. Like,
yeah.
so if we thought Rupert was right wing, he's far, far right of that.
He's bought into the dream, the nightmare.
Well,
Yeah,
the interesting thing will be to see if he emerges. So we understand his political alignments,
mm,
but we don't understand his religious alignments because with all of those broligarchs, I'm
yes.
calling them because they're bros who are oligarchs. So I'm
Yep,
calling them broligarchs
yep.
in the US. So Peter Thiel, Elon Musk, all of those sort of people.
Bezos.
They have a religious angle to their right wing ideology, and it'll be really interesting to see over time if Lachlan has a religious aspect to his ideology that will emerge under the Trump regime.
Yep, yep.
But he's,
Well, Teal doesn't think that humans should inhabit the earth anyway. That's
well,
going to be
we
interesting.
should we need to do a deep dive until he's a complete nutter.
Very,
He's
very
like he's
evil.
gay. He's a weirdo Catholic, like not a proper Catholic, a weirdo Catholic. Like we should totally do a thing on the broligarchs and their weird religious ideas.
Yes, and data. Maybe that can be our common thread. And Palantir and data and digital
Yeah.
ID. So
But the
he's the
interesting
man that
thing,
started it all.
the family heritage is so strong. So
Yeah.
they have always hated the free media. They've always hated the independent ABC media. So Rupert's dad, that's him there pictured, he literally tried to kill the ABC the moment it was born. So they have been trying to crush mercilessly any kind of independent media in Australia and wherever else they are, ever since good old Keith was a nipper. Now, these are some of the think tanks they
This
support.
is
These are people.
important.
These are conservative think tanks that News Corp has given money to, and also they've given it in their own personal right. So there is the Institute of Public Affairs, which is very, very secretive about its funding sources, but Gina Reinhardt gives them oodles of money. And they are widely considered to have strong ties to News Corp. And then there is the Centre for Independent Studies, which brands itself as like a free market economics group, but is basically just a mouthpiece for conservative think pieces. And then there's the Menzies Research Centre, which is the Liberal Party's think tank.
Mm.
And then there's Advance Australia, which we mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
So they're kind of a campaign group, but they act a bit like a think tank. So, and they channel money and resources into things like astroturfing campaigns against sort of what they consider to be popular progressive positions. Things like climate change.
Yeah, the Climate 200 candidates, they
Yeah.
really did a good one there on those guys last election.
Now, how they do this support is they use their entire empire. So
Yeah.
they use all of their outlets, their news, their print media, their TV assets, their other assets. So they
Access.
they quote them, they cite them, they publish articles for them, they run ads for them. So they make them feel bigger in their media than they really are.
Yep.
So all those Advance Australia positions were really highly profiled in News Corp in the run up to the election, to the last federal election, for example.
What was it? We don't see anybody but a Liberal in any of that media. Still now, today, even though they're not in government, they still go
yeah,
to Libs first, don't they?
yeah. They always do. They always have. The other thing is the boundaries between all those organisations and News Corp are very porous. So
Yeah.
personnel move from one to the other and back and forth. So you'll often see somebody pop up as a journalist and then pop up in IPA and then pop back, or Menzies Centre and stuff like. So that's interesting. And then there's the international links. So Murdoch has been really, really closely aligned with the Heritage Foundation, and they are the people that wrote Trump's Project 2025 mandate.
Yeah.
And they've also really closely associated with the UK think tanks that are connected to the Atlas Network, who we've also mentioned previously.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
they're like Advance Australia, but for the world.
And you can see it in what they say and do, right?
Hmm.
The connection. So this is one of the big things too, that it's some other perspectives on murder. It's not just about what they own, it's how they use it, isn't it, Kate?
Hmm.
Yeah.
And you know, the really important thing is this is not going to go away. So people need to understand the scale of the octopus, like that it's got its tentacles in all parts of our society in Australia,
Yeah.
and that it's not going to go away. And that we need to have, you know, better media literacy, so people are reading critically. Like you said, like when you started reading the Australian and realizing they're just making stuff up, or they're saying things that are manifestly not correct.
Turn the page, put it down, find another publication. But it's so important, that literacy. But I mean, that to me is also why we haven't had that education or that level of emotional awareness or understanding or intelligence, because they don't want us to be like that. So then we can't be fooled easily. Like, they're not putting on a tin hat. That's fact, because in that should be an inherent part of our education, how to critically think, how to understand the connection of things and see things come through. But we're not taught that. You know, maths and English does not prepare you for all of this stuff, does it? So
And you know, like the kids are learning media literacy in schools, but those of us who graduated from high school before in the before times, we didn't get media literacy training, so we might need some remedial work.
Absolutely.
Um,
I definitely think, because when you mention it to people too, and they go, "Oh my God, how did I not see that?" And it's also too because these companies and these people do fund the they do fund politicians to make sure that legislation that can work against them does not get introduced. So they
yeah.
make sure that they are kept very safe. Speaking of which,
So you cannot underestimate the power of these people.
yeah,
So I can remember a time earlier this century, so in the early 2000s, and I was in the Premier's office, New South Wales Premier's office, and I'm not going to name the Premier, but the Premier was in their office, and Alan Jones, who was a radio personality, a right-wing radio personality, very closely aligned with Murdoch and the Liberal Party, was in that office and was literally berating the Premier of New South Wales and saying, if you don't do what I want, I will excoriate you in the media. And I was just gobsmacked to be sitting outside and overhear this conversation. And this is the kind of thing that Murdoch would have done too. So even Kevin Rudd was saying that he was afraid of Murdoch. He was afraid of that media beast. Now they've lost a lot of their power. So remember the Anastasia Palaszczuk elections in Queensland?
yeah,
The Murdoch media was dead against her, and they put it in all their news media, and it didn't matter. And that was the moment that I realised that the news media in Australia was still important but kind of dead.
yeah,
And that's why their revenue's gone down, because nobody's consuming that and believing that in the same way anymore.
yeah,
Doesn't have the power it used to have. So Kevin Rudd was right to be afraid. I don't think people in Australia need to be afraid. What we need to become conscious of is all of these groups like Advance Australia and IPA and the others, and understand how they're starting to influence other media that we might be consuming.
yes, absolutely. And by doing this, it helps, doesn't it?
Well,
9. Well, that's I think I said that to you on the weekend. A friend of mine, because a lot of my friends are like, "Oh my God, stop talking about politics," which I refuse to do, and they're now consuming and looking at different people that they watch clips of or different sites and ask questions. Is this person legit? What about this? That would not have happened. Like, and I'm like, we're just doing this, we're very early in all of this, but I've had so much feedback from people telling me that they wouldn't have thought they'd enjoyed it. They didn't realize what they didn't know, what they need to know, that this is really important to educate us as consumers and constituents so that we don't turn into a country that worships awful, evil, rich people that don't care about us. So
Hmm.
it's a great way to turn that light on.
Well,
It's
just
so
just
important.
going through that endless list of News Corp stuff, like, oh my God, there's still more. There's still more. Wait, there's still more.
Well,
Like,
that was like
really?
35 slides on News Corp. It was, Kate. 35. There won't be that many for these guys, don't worry. 9. I had such a soft spot for Channel 9. I don't know why. I've always loved 9. Not anymore.
Well, back in the day, the four main news channels, they were like part of your family. You used to watch the
Yeah,
6 o'clock news, and you had if every family had their favorite channel.
so true. Brian told me.
We were a Channel
Brian
9
told me.
family,
Yeah,
Brian
so
told
were
me.
we.
Brian told me, like,
Ray
and
Mark.
it was a trusted voice,
Yeah.
and it
Yes.
was it was a fairly neutral voice. It wasn't trying to push an agenda back in those days.
Yeah.
So,
But to your
um,
point, you said it with when we're talking about the MAGAs and the people who don't even want to know the truth in the US. I was I was intrigued by this whole thing of when you find out the truth, you sticking to the lie. And it really is about people who don't, number one, they don't want to admit that they're wrong. And then if they were wrong about this, what else are they wrong about? And it shakes them to the core. So it's just easier to stick to the lie. So
well,
that's sort of happened with all of our favorite channels too, hasn't it?
Well, no, there's this really interesting research into cults.
Yes.
There's all these
Yeah.
cults in America. America's the home of cults. I don't know why. But there's all these weird cults, and they predict things. They predict the end of the world, and um,
Yeah.
and then it doesn't happen, and their followers stay. So their followers are like, well, it didn't happen, and what they do is they experience cognitive dissonance, and then they craft a story as to why it didn't happen, and they stay in the cult because of the social connections. So the research has shown that people stay in the cults because of the social connections, not
Yeah.
because of the prophecies.
Yeah. Yeah. But well, bad. It's same thing about bad relationships, bad friendships, bad jobs.
Hmm.
It's safer. Even as awful as it is, it's safer on some level until it's not, I suppose. But yeah,
Yeah.
Channel 9. So they're a bit more integrated across media, aren't they, Kate, than News Corp?
So this was actually, so the media used to be split between the Murdochs and the Packers.
Mm.
So this was the Packer family business.
Yeah. So that
Um, yeah,
2008, they ended their involvement, didn't they?
yeah. So they originally had this company called Publishing Broadcasting Limited, which had newspapers, TV stations around the country, and then the Packers exited that, and then Jamie Packer, who's the youngest Packer, who's inherited everything, decided he was going to get into gambling, so he went into Crown and all of that stuff. So that's when they changed their name to Nine, and then they actually merged with the remains of Fairfax Media. So I don't know if you recall, you probably do recall, but back in the day,
Yeah.
Fairfax Media was the premier news media platform in Australia. They were the paper of record. That
Yeah.
was where you wanted to be published. They had the rivers of gold from their classifieds. If you wanted to buy a car, sell a car, buy a house, sell a house, rent a house, that's where you went. You went to that newspaper.
Yeah.
And so and they didn't understand the digital threat. So back in the early 2010, about early 2000s to 2010, they didn't understand the digital threat,
Mm.
and they thought that they would always own that space,
Yeah.
and they didn't. Anyway, so there was Fairfax family shenanigans that led to the organization being much diminished. It merged in with Nine, and hilariously, Peter Costello was the chair.
That
So,
floored me. That floored me
so
that he
if
did
you
that.
want to work out what kind of alignment they might have, you've got the Fairfax family, um, really diminished, not important anymore. You have the Packer family, and then basically it becomes basically a Liberal Party
Mm.
organ when it became Nine Media.
Yep. And you can see that really, can't you, in everything they put out. And then Peter Costello gets put on the Christmas tree.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
insane.
Yeah, so they've still got a lot of properties, but not getting the traffic that they used to,
Yeah.
and they've got a few things, like AFR. Who still reads the AFR? Mark Pesci. He's the only person I know who still reads the AFR. Um, the Sydney Morning Herald, they paywalled it behind, so unless you've got a subscription, you can't read anything now. So their distribution's going down.
Yeah. And I mean, Stan's also, well, we have a lot of platforms here because Jace loves watching sport, so much sport. And Stan, like if something has football, we sign up. If it stops the football, we sign off.
Yeah.
And it sort of comes down to that at the end of the day. And that's not enough to sustain businesses moving forward either, is it? Like they don't seem to have here. So this was the other, they did increase their volume. My dog he's been very naughty while we've been talking because he knows I can't get up and reprimand him. And he's just come out and won't make eye contact with
Well,
me.
mine's been jumping up and down the whole time.
See, I can't see. Yeah, I'm talking about you. You're in big trouble. I know what you've been doing. Sorry to interrupt you, Kate, because he's just so bad. But anyway, back to Nine revenue. This was interesting because they actually had increase. They had increase and their growth was Stan digital publishing advertising, not if you go back over. So digital publishing and advertising doesn't cover Nine Network, Nine Radio, or the newspapers, does it? I
Yeah.
thought that was interesting. So the first
Yeah,
three
so
were
it's
their
the Dyer media
heritage.
is not doing well.
Yeah. It's the advertising and digital. Interesting. But I mean, that is good growth, really, isn't it?
Hmm.
And then Seven West Media. Poor old Seven. Oh, sorry. Did you want to say anything else about Nine?
No. So
Yep.
that's it. That's good.
And then Seven Media, 63% plummet in 2025. Can you believe this?
Yes, I can.
Whew.
I love it. It's I
I couldn't
now
believe it. I could check it.
Kerry Stokes is another media owner who
Yeah.
is fairly right wing in his viewpoints, and
What a shock.
he bankrolled that idiot Ben Roberts-Smith,
Mm,
that
mm, mm.
that VC winning person who then got accused of war crimes and then managed to prove it in court. So he
Brutal
bankrolled
stuff.
that. So, that just tells you what his judgment's like.
I mean, even it was so overt. It was such a mistake to do that, really. But the interesting thing was that the advertising revenue is this is the thing that they all can't seem to master or solve is that it will go down on your legacy stuff. You have to get it together on the digital, but they just don't seem to get that. Interestingly, though, Seven Network is the highest rated television network nationally in terms of ratings,
Yeah,
but they plummet
but they
they
make no
can't turn that
money.
into advertising.
They make no money.
Yeah.
It's
It's
so funny.
interesting though, isn't it? But how,
But
yeah,
but
you
it's
think
but
that they
it's
go
this thing that
together.
they don't none of these groups seem to be able to get a handle on the new media world
Yeah.
and work out how to make money on that, so we'll see.
Yet so many people leave legacy media and create these platforms and turn them into a success. So somewhere somebody's told them no in legacy and they've made it happen outside. So it just shows you the short-sightedness.
Hmm.
Even ABC anyway, that's not. So Seven West Media, they've got Seven Network, West Australian, Sunday Times and Community Newspaper Group. So that's their big portfolio.
So the
And they're
community newspaper group
yeah.
is probably the biggest one of that, and that has a lot of reach across the country. I think I vaguely remember they grabbed that from Fairfax, I think. Anyway.
I can't. Yes, because when I worked at Grace Brothers in promotions, they used to have the gossip. Remember all the socialite pages, and
Hmm.
there were like multiple pages. Now it's such a thin publication. It's such a pity. Such an important thing for community, but they relied on real estate to pay for advertising and didn't really focus on the community. And now nobody reads it.
Yeah.
Such a pity. So they're merging. So Southern Cross Media and Seven. So this is what Seven have, and this is what Southern Cross Media have. They've got the podcast platforms and radio networks that Seven doesn't have. So they're going to be getting into bed together and merge, which is causing a bit of a kerfuffle with some people because
Well, it's the really traditional kerfuffle in Australia whenever one of these mergers happens, which is it's reducing diversity across the media landscape in Australia. It's increasing concentration of media ownership, um, and it's reducing the number of job opportunities because of the consolidation across media. So this is always the thing. Um, but it's going to be interesting to see what happens with the podcast platforms because I see that as the growth area.
yeah, for sure. Or and see how they manage it as well.
Mm,
But again, it comes down to then we've got a small number of people owning a large number of platforms. So the interesting thing on this is the impact on journalism too, isn't it? So how does this then what's happened to
mm.
journalism? I thought this was an interesting article. Australian media concentration ranked second worst in the world as experts call for levy on tech firms. So we're number 2. Isn't that
It's
great that we're
always been
number 2 in
second
the world?
worst in the world.
Isn't it like
We've always been up there.
it's so good to be second worst. First worst, just so you know, is Brazil. So if that doesn't tell you something, I don't know what does. But I thought the interesting thing was around the impact on journalism is true, and we see that, don't we? We've seen that people aren't writing the stories or doing the investigative reporting that they used to do anymore, which is a real pity.
Well, I think now most media will be moving to AI generated stories anyway.
Yuck.
Um, so the jobs are going to go, and they've been declining for years. I remember
Yeah.
I was at a conference with Bronwyn Clune in like 2010 where we predicted the demise of news media and journalism, and then a couple of years later we were like, we didn't think it would happen this fast.
Yeah. But again, sorry, Kate, it's not you, it's me. Sorry, guys. It's been a very long week. It's Friday afternoon. Um, but but again, I come back to because it wasn't valued and because the investment wasn't made in it and the importance wasn't communicated across, it's been able to disappear. Because it is such an important thing, real journalism, not computer generated putting together of stories and putting together of information and creating a story. There is a difference between news presenting and journalism, isn't there?
Well, one of the things that we should perhaps consider is the history and economics of journalism. So going back to the very olden days, so the 1700s, when journalism started to emerge, and it emerged in line with the American Revolution.
Yeah.
So the French Revolution, the American Revolution, late 1700s, and journalism emerged then as a thing, and it was largely funded by the classifieds. So all the big newspapers had classifieds that cross subsidized the journalism. So journalism has never washed its face as part of the business. It has
Yeah.
always been cross subsidized. Now that all of those news properties have lost that revenue, those rivers of gold from the classifieds, there is nothing to fund journalism except human beings, and human beings typically don't really want to pay for it. And part of the reason human beings don't want to pay for it, because you might like this article by this journalist in this newspaper, but you might like this one from this one on another one, and you can't afford to subscribe to every newspaper in the
Yes.
world
Yeah.
just to get the article from the person you want. So they
Yeah.
actually have this problem of
Very true.
of not being able to support micropayments for consumption of media.
That's the but that would be a solution, wouldn't it? That would
Yeah,
be a really clever solution. Herbie, that would be a very, very clever solution. Which, if they'd solved it 5 years ago, this could look like a very different story, couldn't it?
yeah, but nobody wanted to, and they would have had to collaborate and cooperate, and it would have helped them all survive, but they didn't, so they're dead. So here we are.
So pointless. But this, so to your point of funding. Oh, hang on. Sorry. I think I skipped 2 ahead. Sorry, folks. Um, so yes, we've got the deserts, but this I thought was interesting. Professor Terry Flew, who is at the University of Sydney Communication Department, I want to say Media and Communication. This I thought was interesting is the wholesale dismantling of news driven by growth of news deserts. So to your point around the community news and local news disappearing, but also the threat of AI generated online searches no longer linking to news websites. That's exactly what you just said. So it's interesting to see that the consumer has found a way, but the platforms haven't found a way. And now AI is probably going
I
to
think
impact
I
that
think
greatly.
though that I think potentially Professor Flew is still trapped in the old world paradigm where newspapers were a thing, and the populace seems to have leapfrogged everybody and is now consuming their news via new media, things like TikTok and Instagram Reels and YouTube Shorts and stuff.
Yeah.
So there were news deserts. What we're seeing though, and I think this is what they're talking about is the local news area, you know, where you would have your local newspaper that told your local stories.
Yeah.
Now, they all still exist. And now I still get mine in my letterbox every week and have a look, flick through it. So that still exists. What we're seeing is it's that step up above it, which was those newspapers that were above those local news ones that are the problematic ones. But like,
Yeah.
I get my news from TikTok now. I don't get my news from anywhere else.
Well, I've gone to YouTube because I can't do the TT, but it does my head in TikTok. It like, and you know me, I've jumped on every new platform, but I'd watch it. I just can't. But yeah, you are right. And to your point that you find different pieces of information and news on different places, and I think it was interesting. Like what is news and what is journalism really? There was a policeman was found dead in the snow. I can't remember his girlfriend's name, and they said that she did it, that she backed into him and killed him, and she was on trial. And all of these things have come out now that it looks like his fellow policemen were something happened, and they actually were part of what happened to him and framing her. And it was so interesting during the court. Kate Dean. I wish I
Yeah, I
could.
know the case you mean. And it was
Yeah.
covered, but it was covered in great detail by all these true crime blogs
Yes,
and
by like
podcasts.
that's exactly so.
So
And
it's
then they deep
happening.
dove into it all. Like, and then they were
Yeah,
they'd have chats in places, and they. One guy had 21 million views, Kate, to his
yeah.
post about the latest. Yeah, exactly. They all went
So
and did their
I think
own.
what we're seeing here, I think what we're seeing here is a paradigm shift, a
Yeah,
literal paradigm shift,
yeah.
and it is the death of written down news media. So we used to have newspapers and we used to read newspapers and we used to handle them and they had no search. You know, they're
They had
dying, they're
no
dying, they're dead, they're about,
funny.
and we've got the growth of audio and video content,
Yeah,
which is being constructed, which is still doing things like you know, Kate McClymont, that famous
yeah,
Fairfax media journalist.
yeah.
You know, she's done great investigative journalism. There are still people doing what she does, but they're doing it on their blogs or on their podcasts or on their video
Well,
casts.
I was going to ask you about Substack. Like, look at all the American journalists, institutional journalists who have been fired or left traditional media. They've gone on to Substack, YouTube, Blue Sky, and they're killing it. They're they're
Hmm?
forging the way for how news and information gets found and communicated now in a way that their former employers would never have done. It's
But I
amazing.
think the
It's really
really
impressive.
interesting thing with the platforms is they've got inherent in them that you can generate from your written content a podcast.
Yes.
So, and it's all in the
Yes.
one platform. So the platforms are helping this happen. So I think this slide here is an exemplar of the death of the old written news media.
Well, and then the interesting thing from that was that the call has been put out that Google and Meta, who are 84% of, they hold 84% of the advertising revenue on news or that sort of platform, they're having a call out that they should be paying 2% of their revenues as a levy, which would generate funds, which made me go, would it?
No,
Would it?
that's just crazy. This
Yeah.
is just
So
a, this is just an academic
yes,
being in
because
there over
so
a tower too long, I think.
this is what I wanted to ask you about, because he's saying let's get a levy from Google and well, good luck. But say
But
in the
why should they pay for dying media? Like,
that was my point. It seems it's the same thing as like we live in it, that somebody called for something that banning, well, don't even start me on banning children off YouTube. Well, instead of cleaning up the content and making it a place that is safe for everybody to be on, we're just going to not put kids on there till they're 16. So the idea of
hmm.
banning something because you can't clean it up is the same as saying, well, let's levy the people successfully doing this to prop up the people that don't know what they're doing and don't know how to survive, isn't it?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
we've already looked at a couple of media empires that their revenue is steadily going down. Their view, you know, like Seven West and Murdoch, and they're going down and they don't know what to do with new media. And this is
Yeah.
not a surprise because Rupert Murdoch, do you remember he bought MySpace?
Yes. I
And then
do.
it died. It was already dying, but then he bought it, and I was like, "Oh my God, what an idiot!"
I have to
So it's
because
we're at a
like you
big
said though,
paradigm
they
shift.
will
We're at
probably
a end of an
sorry.
era.
Yeah. So here's our big thing that we have been talking about this through the whole pod, that connection between media ownership and democracy. And this I thought was interesting. So this is on the Australian Institute, the Australia Institute. I always call it the Australian Institute, no, Australia Institute. And this is one of their projects. So this isn't a news story. It's one of their projects, that the connection around media and democracy, and saying that we need to prop up our strong democracy with a strong, diverse media ownership, and pure interested journalism as its heart. But I think at its heart, sorry, I think we've already said that journalism. What is journalism? It's storytelling. So we don't need to have journalists in the same way that we had before. But I thought that this is interesting because this is why it matters, is because our democracy and our freedom does rest on having the right information and the right tools to vote properly, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. But one of the things that we need to contemplate is that we need to not shoehorn it into the old paradigm.
Yes. Yeah. That it's the new well, any truth though, but it's the same thing as like you're saying on TikTok. Like we're about to have a massive flood now of right-wing information and right-wing
Hmm,
voices in there. That's not going to help democracy. That's not, but that's still news and information, isn't it?
hmm,
For
yeah.
2025. Yeah. Interesting. If I saw quite a few creators this morning saying that their videos, which had like say 50,000 views, were getting like 4,000 views today after the new
Well,
transfer. So it's interesting.
what we're seeing on platforms like TikTok, and that's not the only one. There's many of them. Um, they form brigades. So the people who are opposing that viewpoint form brigades and mass report them. So those creators will often be banned from the platform or their content will be removed. The platforms are going to have to develop some tools to recognize that kind of brigading behavior and deal with it.
Well, to your point, I think I've found somebody who can help us with my Facebook dilemma. But millions of accounts have just been closed down with no reason, no no rhyme nor reason. But they managed to shut down accounts, but they keep these bot farms open and they keep going. So there are ways that there are mechanisms. They're just not using it. I think also too the thing with TikTok is the new ownership and the new algorithm that will be interesting to watch as well.
Oh, well, that's just going to carve off the US. I think the rest of
Yeah.
us will be left there like they were. It was nice when the US went last time. I enjoyed it.
No, but I think there'll be more vile US. I don't think they won't be there. I think what will be there
No, no,
will
no.
be.
They'll be in a separate app. They will be in literally a separate app that'll
Oh,
be
will
hosted in the
they?
US. Yeah, we need to do an episode on it.
Oh, stay
It's the
tuned,
most
folks.
bonkers thing.
You see, yeah, see, TT does my head in. Okay, so we're nearly there. Thanks for hanging in there with us. But this is a really important thing to get through. So our media recommendations, because the truth is out there, Kate. We
It is.
will we will share this list some more, but it's the same list that we share, and we really really encourage you. My friend Punter's Politics isn't on there, sorry, Punter, but we will include you on there. But the more
Oh, we
you
need to
consume
add
this,
him.
yeah, we do. The more you consume this information, the more you look at this information, you'll start to see patterns, information, people. You'll see things refuted that aren't true. So it will really help get your understanding. And a very important section for us is our women's health. Kate, would you like to go through this?
Yeah, so I wanted to just cover off this one. um, because it's really, there's a lot of new research coming out now about perimenopause and menopause.
Yeah.
And this one's actually from New Scientist magazine, and it's looking at what they call the hormonal upheaval that is the run up to menopause in women's brains. And a lot of women report brain fog, and that it can be so severe that women fear that they're getting dementia.
Yeah.
And some of the recent research is showing us that there might be a window of opportunity for preventing dementia. So women in menopause get dementia at much greater rates than men. So women are really prone to dementia, and one of the things we're starting to think is that some HRT, not a lot, but at a specific window when you're in perimenopause, can help prevent the onset of dementia later on, which is a really interesting research finding.
And it is that chemical imbalance in the brain that's causing it, that link to the chemical imbalance. It's interesting because I do know quite a few of my friends have had that very and successful, driven professional women still working have had that brain fog and have had that feeling of, oh my god, am I losing my mind, and have gone on to HRT, and the difference is 180. Like, it's
Hmm.
just incredible. But I think it's interesting. Um, my friend of mine who's in pharmaceuticals in the UK, she's in the industry, and she said there's even a difference around HRT, the biological one and the synthetic one. So that's even going down. And I think anything that works with your body is far more important than putting something synthetic in. But I think it's so important to have that, because a lot of doctors aren't even saying this, Kate. I know so
Yeah.
many women that have gone to their doctors for the brain fog or issues, and they've sent them to have an
They
Alzheimer's
tell
test
them they've got
before they give them
anxiety and put them
hormones.
on
Yeah, yeah,
antidepressants and stuff. It's just
yeah,
ridiculous.
yeah.
So women need to understand that there are alternatives, and it's worthwhile if you are in perimenopause or menopause to go and talk to your doctor. And if your doctor doesn't want to talk to you about it, go to another
Find a new
doctor
doctor.
who will
Exactly.
talk to you about it.
Exactly. Do you know?
And to consider, you can get estrogen and progesterone, but estrogen you can get it in two forms. So there's estradiol and another one. I can't remember the other one's called. And you can get patches, gel, and tablets.
Yeah.
And
And an insert, and a vaginal insert, you can get
oh
that
yeah,
as well.
there's vaginal pessaries and vaginal cream,
Yeah.
and so the difference between all of those is actually really important. So even if you've got a family history of cancer,
Mm,
you should probably consider using some vaginal estrogen,
yeah.
because it'll actually reduce your chances of getting chronic urinary tract infections, which is what carries off an awful lot of older people. I didn't know that until
It's
I
yeah.
started
Yeah,
researching.
it's also too, like, that's where your estrogen normally is created and made. So it's around having it, having it supported in that way. And there is so much that she must be in her early 30s, my new chiropractor, who is amazing despite her young age, but she's very, very clever. And this week she said to me, oh my god, people are freaking me out about, like, early 30s, Kate. They're talking about perimenopause and menopause, and I've got so much. And I said to her, what prompted that? She said, oh, we were just talking about it the other day. And I said, look, the good thing is that your generation will have it a lot better. And it is
Mm.
great that they're talking about it. Because, when we were growing up, like, my mum was very open, so it was a bit different. But so many of my friends, even now, if I talk to them about it, they're like, why are you talking about this? But it's so important. It's so important to know your body, get support. Don't live in pain. Don't live in discomfort. And also, well, as we get older, we pee more. Estrogen helps with getting up in the middle of the night and peeing, like things like that. It's like, make your life easy. It's such a gift.
Well, the other thing is it helps with frozen shoulders. So, frozen shoulder is largely a disease that impacts women in perimenopause and menopause. And it's when your estrogen drops. So, you can actually avoid frozen shoulder, which I've had, by taking estrogen.
It's got, yeah, I've had a stiff knee. I've never had that in my life. And yeah, hormones, baby. It's a gift that keeps on giving.
Yeah.
And let's have a little bit of good news. I love this
Well,
one.
this is kind of good news, bad news. Like, it's because of us that we
Yeah,
need this,
yeah,
but it is good news.
yeah. And well, do you want me to read it? Or shall I read it quickly?
Yeah.
So, Oxford University, a study team at Oxford has identified the fermentation method that creates perfect balanced diet for honeybees who can't get enough natural pollen vital for the growth of the world and seeding of plants. Synthetic pollen substitutes are often fed to bees as dietary supplements to natural pollen, but until now it's been difficult to replicate. Now they've created a pollen, or they've found the sterols found in pollen that bees need to survive. So it's been so. But with Oxford bees rearing 15 times more larvae, the scientists from England and Denmark are confident they've perfected this sterile recipe. So they're actually even multiplying faster because of this one thing. And it's so important, bees,
Yep.
because if bees don't live, they can't pollinate plants that help us live and breathe. So, coming into summer for Australians, put out water, little cups of water in round flowers with, um, well, any flowering plant, so that if bees are around there, they can pop in and have a little drink or somewhere to stand. Make them little places that they can stand nicely. So just there's some really great bee products in Bunnings which we've bought and put in our garden. So do your bit, Australia. It's really
I've
important.
made a little bee. I've made a little bee bath thing with little river pebbles in it. A bowl, a flat bowl with anyway, because
Yeah, not
my
deep.
friend Annie Parker told me about that, so I did it.
Yep. So you can't don't make a big cup that's deep because if they fall in they can't get out. But to Kate's point, if you put the pebbles in, they can stand on the pebbles and have a little drink. So important.
Love the
And of
bees.
course, we can't have a pod without asking you to join our campaign. I need to share this a bit more this month to stop the intrusive advertising during election campaigns. If we don't consent, they cannot send. And you might be going, oh, come on, but if we don't do this now, we're going to have the text again next election. So let's get onto it and let's please sign it. And please connect with us, folks. You can email us, check the website, check out our link tree. It's under every episode of whatever you're looking at as well. We're on the socials and we would love to hear what you'd like to know about or any comments or feedback you've had about the pod.
Oh yeah, and give us a nice review, please. Thank you.
Of course. Oh, sorry. Of course. If you're watching this and you haven't liked it, please like it. And if you're watching this on whatever platform, please follow us and or subscribe. Subscription on YouTube is free. You do not have to pay for it, but it does help us make sure that we can hang around a bit longer. So thank you very much. Thanks for joining us. Thanks, Kate. I love your big brain. This is great.
Thanks so much,
See you
Nancy.
next
Always a
time.
pleasure to chat with you.
Always, always. Thank you. And we will definitely be seeing you next episode, folks. Thanks for joining us.
Bye.